Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. My girlfriend paused the movie and said this. If you ever want to marry me, you cut off Noah. No warning, no build-up, just that sentence dropped between scenes. I laughed at first because it sounded like a bad joke. She did not laugh back, and that was my first problem. I am Jake, 28, and I honestly froze. My brain tried to rewind the last 5 minutes for clues. We were fine 10 seconds earlier, or at least I thought. Her eyes stayed on me like she was waiting for paperwork. Did you hear me? She asked, and my mouth went dry. Yeah, I heard you, I managed, still expecting a punchline somewhere. Why would I cut off Noah? He introduced us. That felt like important context, like mentioning gravity during a fall. She sighed through her nose, slow and controlled, like I was difficult. Because I will not marry you while he is around. I know how dramatic that sounds written down now. At that moment it felt even worse, because I had a ring hidden already. Not on the table, not in my pocket, just somewhere too close. I remember feeling its weight without even touching the box. She had no idea how close she was swinging. I sat up straighter, stalling for whatever sanity I still had. Okay, back up a second, I said, hands raised a little. What does Noah have to do with our marriage exactly? Her jaw tightened like I had missed something very obvious. Everything, she said, and she grabbed the remote again. She muted the TV fully, like a judge closing a door. I am serious, Jake, I cannot feel safe while he is around. Safe was a loaded word, it pulled my stomach down immediately. Did he do something? I asked, and my voice climbed. Because if he crossed a line, then we talk. She shook her head once, sharp and impatient, eyes still locked. He is manipulative, he pushes your buttons, he pushes mine. Every time he is in your life, you treat me differently. That stung because my first instinct was to defend myself. My second instinct was to replay every hangout we three ever had. You know that weird feeling when someone rewrites your past? Like they grab normal memories and twist them into something rotten. That was how it felt hearing her talk about him now. I knew Noah could be an idiot, loud and reckless sometimes. I had never filed him under dangerous until she used that word. I treat you differently how? I asked, trying to keep my tone level. You cancel plans for him, you take his side, you ignore me. She counted on her fingers like she was presenting a report. Last month you left my cousin's birthday to grab drinks with him. Last week you told him things from our argument, that was betrayal. That last part hit harder than I wanted to show. I had told Noah about that argument, about our fight over money. Not every detail, just enough to vent, or at least I believed. Hearing her call it betrayal put me instantly on defense. That is not cutting him off material, I said, maybe too fast. Looking back now, I can see myself digging and stubborn. At the time I felt cornered, like every answer was wrong. I hate ultimatums, they feel like traps with polite wording. So the second she said marry me or lose him, I shut down. My brain cared more about the threat than her actual reasons. He is my best friend, I said, and it sounded weak. She raised an eyebrow like I had just confirmed her worst theory. Exactly, she said, and she leaned forward on her knees. If he is your best friend, he should respect our relationship. He does not, Jake, he undermines it every chance he gets. I wanted proof, screenshots, some kind of exhibit on the coffee table. Instead I had fragments, jokes he made, sarcasm during double dates. He had teased her about being organized, about planning everything tight. She had rolled her eyes back then, now those same moments were weapons. He makes fun of me in front of you, and you laugh. That part actually made my chest pinch because she was correct. I had laughed many times because that was our group dynamic. Noah roasted everyone, I threw lines back, she sometimes joined in. Now she watched me like those laughs had been little betrayals. I thought you were fine with that, I said, already hearing myself. Her hands went up, then dropped into her lap, fingers clenched together. Of course I acted fine, what was I supposed to do? Start screaming in the restaurant, demand you defend my honor there. Her voice cracked on the last word, which she clearly hated. I told you after, I told you privately, and you still shrugged. This is where my brain split into two timelines. In one, I doubled down, called her overdramatic, protected my comfort. In the other, I actually listened, asked more questions, stayed curious. Standing here writing this, I wish I had picked the second. Back on that couch, I grabbed the first shield I found. You are asking me to drop someone who has been here for years. Over jokes and a couple bad nights, that is extreme. The temperature in the room changed, even without describing it. She leaned back and just stared at me for a long moment. I am asking you to put our future first, she finally said. The word future landed differently because I had one planned already. I had imagined telling Noah first, imagined him hugging me rough. In that version, he was the best man, not the villain. My chest tightened with that quiet clash between versions of reality. Why link Noah to marriage specifically? I asked, and she flinched. She wiped her palms on her jeans, a small nervous gesture. Because dating you while he is around is one thing. Building a life with you while he hangs over everything is another. It is like trying to build a house on sand, she muttered. I saw her eyes shine, and I was not ready for tears. I am not going to pretend I handled that moment gracefully. Part of me wanted to comfort her, part wanted to walk out. I picked the middle, which was probably the worst possible choice. I sat there, hands locked together, and asked for specifics again. What did he do exactly? What is the line he crossed? She looked at me like I was missing the entire point. It is not one thing, she said, and her voice dropped lower. It is how he looks at me, how he talks to you about me. It is the way he inserts himself, like he belongs inside our fights. Every sentence stacked up, but still felt just out of reach. Give me one example, I asked, because I needed something solid. She hesitated, which annoyed me way more than it should. He told you I was controlling, she finally said, eyes narrowing at memory. And you repeated it back to me like it was a fact. I heard his voice in your mouth, and I hated that. That line burned because I remembered the exact conversation. I had been angry, tired, and I had thrown that word. Controlling. Her face had shut down so fast it honestly scared me. Now I knew where she believed that word had been born. Okay, I said, feeling my pulse in my neck already. I did say that, and it was a shitty move from me. But that was my choice, not something he forced. I could feel the argument sliding sideways, away from the ultimatum. She dragged it right back, like a hook yanking us in. Even if you believe that, look at the pattern with him. Every time we're close to something serious, he ramps up. More texts, more invites, more comments about you being whipped. She scoffed, a bitter sound that did not match her usual tone. And you eat it up because he is fun and I am boring. That last line cut across my prepared defenses very fast. She had never said she thought she was boring before. This was not just anger, it was something softer and uglier. Still, she was packaging that hurt inside an ultimatum, which sucked. I sat there trying to separate genuine pain from raw manipulation. You ever sit in front of someone you love and negotiate reality? Every sentence feels like a small trial, every story on the stand. That was our living room in that moment, jury of two. No phones, no distractions, just her voice shaping our history. I heard myself starting to pick sides inside my own skull. Do you understand what I am saying? She asked, quieter now. If you want me as your wife, he cannot be in your life. That is the condition I need to feel safe with you. She folded her arms and waited, like she had practiced that line. She did not blink much, and the silence dragged like a rope. I wish I could tell you I responded with wisdom here. I did not. I cracked a joke because that is my worst habit. So what? I sent him a text saying, sorry man, retirement. Her expression did not move, and my attempt died between us. Her voice came out flat when she answered that weak joke. You tell him he is no longer part of your life, Jake. You tell him we are serious and he does not have a place. You stop sharing our business with someone who disrespects me. And if you cannot do that, then I know where I stand. That last line finally killed the last of my defensive humor. Because I could see she believed every word she was saying. This was not a test she expected me to pass easily. It felt more like she was ready for either outcome already. Either she got the version of me she wanted or she walked. In my head, Noah was not some cartoon villain in this story. He was the friend who picked me up after breakups, after layoffs. The guy who dragged me out when I would have stewed alone. Hearing his name used like a curse word tangled up my loyalty. Another part of me whispered that maybe she was seeing something I refused. I stayed quiet too long, and you never want that silence. Her shoulders slumped a little, like she heard my answer in my pause. You do not have to decide this second, she said, voice almost gentle. But you need to understand, I will not change my me. ND on this. Marriage with me means no, Noah, that is the deal on the table. That was the moment the ring in my drawer changed weight forever. Until that night, it symbolized something bright, a step forward. Now it sat up there in my brain as a problem, not a promise. Because proposing meant accepting her condition or lying about it. Walking away from the ultimatum meant maybe walking away from her completely. I nodded once because words felt like they would betray me. We should finish the movie another time, I said, which was pathetic. She studied me like she wanted to memorize my face in that moment. Think about what I said, she murmured, then grabbed her phone. The TV stayed dark while she scrolled, and I watched everything shift. My phone buzzed before my alarm, and Noah's name filled the screen. A stupid meme about proposals, some guy kneeling in a parking lot. Your budget engagement, his caption read with 3 laughing emojis. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, and I felt my chest tighten again. 24 hours after her demand, he was already standing on that line. I locked the screen and just stared at the ceiling in silence. You ever feel like 2 parts of your life collide in slow motion? That was me in that bed, 1 foot in each world. If he knew what she had dropped on me, he would joke. I was scared that if she knew about this meme, she would explode. At breakfast, I kept my phone face down, which I almost never do. She noticed right away, of course she did, her eyes flicked toward it. You talked to him yet? She asked, voice casual but not really. I took a slow sip of coffee, buying half a second of courage. Not yet, I said, and the air thinned a little. Are you going to? She asked, picking at the edge of her mug. I told you, I am not comfortable just pretending this is fine. The word pretending hit me harder than I expected in that moment. It made me feel like a liar before I even chose a side. I am thinking, I answered, which sounded weak even to me. She exhaled through her nose, long and deliberate like a warning shot. What is there to think about? She asked, eyes fixed on my face. Either you protect what we are building or you keep that chaos. Her fingers drummed on the table, short annoyed taps speeding up. I watched her hand instead of answering, which was not a good choice. I need to understand what exactly he did, I finally pushed out. You keep saying he is dangerous, but not what that means. I cannot just cut someone off because you feel a vibe. Her gaze sharpened at that word vibe, like I had insulted her. You really think this is about a vibe? She asked, voice rising. She stood up, walked a quick circle around the table, then stopped. You know how he texts you every time we argue, she started, jaw tight. You complain to him, and then suddenly you calm down with me. It is like he feeds you lines, and I am arguing with both of you. Her eyes shone, and I understood this was not just anger anymore. I wanted to say I was just venting like anyone does. The words caught in my throat because I knew she would hear dismissal. Instead, I reached for something that sounded more reasonable and grown. I talk to him when I am upset, yeah, but my choices are mine. It came out defensive anyway, and I watched her shoulders stiffen. She leaned on the back of her chair, knuckles pale against the wood. He makes jokes about me being strict, and you repeat them later. He calls me the warden, and then you throw that at me in fights. I hear his voice in your insults, and I am supposed to feel secure. Her throat worked around that last word like it physically hurt. Looking back, this was a moment I could have taken seriously. In real time, I filtered it through my loyalty filter and minimized. Those are just stupid jokes, I said, waving a hand too quickly. You know Noah, he teases everyone, that is just how he is. Her face went blank in a way that scared me more than yelling. Do you hear yourself? She asked, almost quietly, which stung worse. You are defending a guy who drags your relationship for entertainment. You excuse him because it is his sense of humor, like that excuses everything. If a stranger talked about me like that, you would lose it instantly. But because it is him, you laugh and I become the uptight one. She was not wrong about that double standard and I knew it. I still hated feeling cornered, so my brain searched for loopholes. Then we set boundaries, I said, clinging to a middle ground. I tell him to lay off certain subjects, stop updating him on arguments. That is different from cutting him out of my life completely. She shook her head slowly, like she was already exhausted by that answer. You really think he will change just because you ask nicely? She asked. He loves stirring the pot, you know that better than anyone. If you give him a line, he will push right up against it. Meanwhile, I am the one who feels watched every time my phone lights up. That last image landed hard because I had never considered that. I pictured her seeing his name on my screen during tense moments. I realized how many times I had picked up with her still mid-sentence. Even if he never meant harm, our patterns gave him a front row seat. I did not admit that out loud, which was my mistake. I cannot promise something I am not sure about, I finally muttered. Her eyes closed for a second like she was counting backward. I am asking you to choose who gets priority, she answered after a beat. If you want me long term, you cannot keep someone who chips away at us. If you cannot see that, I really do not know what to do. We finished our food in a silence that hummed with unspoken arguments. When she left for work, the door clicked with this weird final tone. I stood there in the kitchen, phone heavy in my hand, heart pounding. 2 unread messages from Noah waited, both harmless and stupid. I opened our chat and scrolled back, looking for whatever she saw. You ever reread old texts and wonder how you missed the pattern? I dragged through months of screenshots, jokes, trash talk, venting. Plenty of banter about her schedule, about how she likes things planned. Short lines from him like, man, she sounds intense, or you sure about this? At the time I had laughed, now they look sharper. I caught one thread that made my stomach dip in place. I had sent, she wants me home tonight, but the guys invited me out. He replied, dude, you are not married, tell her to relax and come. She had been reading that over my shoulder that night at our sofa. I remembered her tightening beside me, and I had brushed it off. It is easy to call that harmless when you feel untouchable. Sitting there in the kitchen with her ultimatum echoing, it felt different. I could see why she thought he stretched our fights longer. Every time she set a limit, he offered me an escape hatch. I had taken those exits more than I wanted to admit. Still, nothing in those messages screamed predator or anything dramatic. No threats, no wild insults, just steady undermining dressed as bro advice. If you already disliked the guy, you could read it as calculated. If you loved him like a brother, you would call it clueless support. I hovered in between, which is a terrible place to stand. Finally, I took a breath and hit call, my thumb shaking slightly. He answered on the second ring with his usual over-the-top greeting. Look who remembered I exist, Mr. Serious Relationship, he laughed. I did not join in, and the pause made him trail off faster than usual. What is going on, he asked, and I could hear him shift. I need to ask you something important, I started, focusing on the floor. You know how I talk to you about stuff with her? Yeah man, I am your therapist, half off, he chuckled then quieted. I let that die and pushed on, pulse thudding in my ears. She thinks you cross lines, that you mess with our relationship on purpose. There was a beat of silence on his end, not dramatic, just stunned. On purpose, he repeated, voice tighter now, no joke in it. She actually believes I wake up plotting ways to ruin you too. I could hear something clatter in the background, like he set something down. What exactly did she accuse me of, like word for word? I walked to the window, needing movement, needing something to do. She says you manipulate situations, turn me against her during arguments. That you call her controlling, and I repeat it back like gospel. That you do not respect us as a couple, that you like stirring trouble. Saying it out loud made my throat burn, like I was betraying both. He let out a sharp breath, more like a short bark than a laugh. Tell me you do not actually buy that version of me, he said. Tell me you know I am just trying to keep you from imploding. You call me when you are furious, I talk you down, end of story. Now I am the villain because she cannot stand that you have friends. That was the first time anyone had framed it that way back to me. Hearing "she cannot stand that you have friends" lit something stubborn. It echoed my own worst fears about her ultimatum, fed my pride. At the same time, a small voice whispered that he was simplifying things. Both of them wanted me in their corner, and I felt pulled apart. "It is not that simple," I answered, rubbing the back of my neck. "She says she feels watched whenever I pick up your calls. She thinks you enjoy it when we fight, that you get entertainment." I flinched even while speaking, because I knew how it sounded. He swore under his breath, then went quiet again. "You remember that night you crashed here after that huge blow-up?" he asked. "I kept you from sending drunk texts all night, I ordered you food. You were the one trash-talking, I was the one saying, 'Calm down.' She never hears about those parts, does she? Just my stupid jokes." His voice shook between anger and something like hurt. A part of me wanted to tell him to stop listing good deeds. It felt like both of them were building closing arguments through me. "You know she asked me to stop seeing you," I finally admitted. "Not just less, not with boundaries, fully out of my life." The words tasted wrong, even though they were true. He did not answer right away, and that pause felt endless. When he spoke again, it was slower, like he was picking each word. "So if you propose, I am uninvited from the rest of your life. Is that the plan now? I get cut for being bad influence." Even through the phone, I could feel him pulling back. "I have not decided," I said, which was honest and pathetic. "I am trying to understand if I missed something, if you did more. If there is anything you never told me, I need to know now." I hated how desperate that last line sounded, like I wanted a confession. He heard it too, and his tone hardened. "You think there is some secret offense I am hiding?" he asked. "If I screwed up that badly, you would already know about it. I am loud about my mistakes, man, you know exactly who I am. If she wants me gone, that is about control, not protecting you. I will not apologize for existing to make her feel better." His certainty rattled me, because it matched my own doubts about her. At the same time, I remembered her eyes when she used the word safe. They were not lying, whatever else you think about her, they were not. Two people I cared about both swore they were right through me. I felt like a rope in a game I never agreed to play. We hung up without solving anything, because of course we did. He ended with, "I hope you choose based on who you are, not who controls you." Which sounded noble, but was also its own kind of pressure. After the call, I stared at our chat again, messages blurring slightly. For the first time, I wondered if keeping both of them was actually impossible. I slid into the booth across from Noah and fired immediately. "She wants you gone if I ever propose." No hello, no drink order, nothing. His grin faded so fast it almost looked fake. "Okay," he said slowly, fingers drumming on the table. "I am not exaggerating," I went on before I chickened out. "Her exact condition is marriage with her means no more you." He watched me like he did not recognize the person talking. "That is a heavy opener for lunch," he muttered, jaw tight. I knew if I softened it now, I would never bring it up again. He leaned back and studied my face for a long second. "Is this about the usual stuff?" he asked, voice low now. "Jokes, advice, her thinking I wind you up?" I shook my head because this felt bigger in my gut. "She used the word safe again," I answered, and his eyes narrowed. Something shifted in his expression at that word, not just annoyance. That was my first hint, and I still missed it. "You told her that I make you unsafe?" he asked, shoulders stiffening. "No," I said fast, that part at least was true. "She came up with that on her own, I am trying to understand why." He stared past me for a second, like he was checking an internal file. "Did she actually give you anything solid this time?" he asked. I repeated the list, the calls during arguments, the comments, the digs. His mouth pressed into a line, then relaxed with visible effort. "All right," he said, "but that still does not sound like exile level." "Then tell me if there is something I do not know," I pushed. "Because right now I am stuck between the two of you. If there is some major thing, I need the full picture." The words came out harsher than I had planned in my head. He watched me like he was deciding how much I deserved. He tapped the table 3 times, then stopped and exhaled. "This is not a small talk question," he said, eyes on his hands. Once I answer, nothing goes back to normal, you get that. That line made the hairs on my arms stand up instantly. I nodded anyway because I was already in too deep. I am serious, Jake, he added, gaze snapping back to mine. You ask for the full truth, you hear the whole thing. You do not get to pick pieces that hurt less later. I felt my stomach twist, but I still pushed forward. I want everything, I said and meant it in that moment. He rubbed his face, then let his hands drag down slowly. For the record, I did not want to be the one talking. She made that very clear when this started, he added, eyes flat. Started, I repeated because that word hit wrong. Started how, Noah? I asked, voice dropping. He looked around once, then leaned in closer across the table. You know that weekend before you met her officially, he began. I knew which one he meant, but I just nodded once. He watched my reaction, probably measuring how fragile I looked. She and I hooked up then, he said. Almost too quietly. It landed like someone emptied a bucket over my head. Not dramatic slow motion, just sudden cold shock. I blinked once, twice, trying to process the new layout. You and her, I repeated because my brain stalled on details. He nodded once, no shade of humor anywhere near his face. It happened again 2 nights later, he added, voice steady. We were not dating, we were not serious, it was casual. He raised his palms like he already heard my counterattack. I know how that sounds now, trust me, I do. Back then it was just 2 people having a good time. I could actually feel anger building behind my ribs. Not sharp yet, more like pressure waiting for somewhere to go. You did not think to mention this when you introduced us, I asked. You watched me fall for someone you had already slept with twice. My words came out louder than I planned, heads turned briefly. He did not flinch at the noise, which almost made me angrier. She was the one who wanted silence, he answered, eyes hard. She told me if I cared about you, I would keep my mouth shut. That if you heard about us, you would walk away instantly. So I followed her lead, and now I am the problem. Hearing her pulled into it twisted the knife in a new direction. It was not just him hiding things, it was a joint decision. She told you I would walk away, I repeated, voice rough. So she knew from day one that this would matter to me. And she chose you for those nights, then chose me for good. Do not twist it like some evil plot, he snapped, leaning forward. We were both single, attracted, and not thinking years ahead. You know how casual stuff works, it is messy, not organized. Then she met you and wanted something different, and she pivoted. You were the serious shot, not the party guy. That explanation did not fix the sick feeling in my chest. I was not offended by the fact that they hooked up honestly. What burned was the deliberate secrecy that followed after that. How long did she ask you to hide this? I asked slowly. Like just first dates or the whole timeline? He swallowed once, that tiny movement punching harder than his words. She said never tell you, those were her exact words, he answered. She thought you would see her differently, you had history with me. She asked me to protect the version of her you were getting. She wanted a clean slate and I stupidly tried to give it. I sat back and let that sink in, heart beat loud in my ears. So while I was imagining some organic love story, they had a secret. Not ancient history either, but days before my entrance. It made her demand about safety feel twisted in a new way. She talked about feeling exposed, but she had built the minefield. Why tell me now? I asked, throat tight, hands locked together. You could have denied everything, thrown it back at her. Why drop this grenade in my lap after all this time? He huffed out a humorless sound that was not quite a laugh. Because I can see where this is going if I keep obeying. He held my eyes and his next words came out slow. If I stay quiet, she gets what she wants with no cost. You cut me out, she keeps her perfect storyline, I vanish. She gets a husband who never questions the script she wrote. And I get to live knowing I helped write that script. He let that hang there between us, thick and uncomfortable. I am not saying this to keep you, he added more softly. If you decide I crossed a line, you are free to walk. I am saying it because I refuse to be erased that clean. Not after playing supporting character in Chapter 1. I realized in that instant that my choice was bigger than friendship. It was about what version of reality I was willing to live inside. Her version where he was a threat she could never explain fully. His version where he was a flawed idiot who kept a promise. Both versions made me look like a fool in different ways. Did you ever tell her you felt weird about hiding it? I asked. Like, did you push back at all or just go along? He rubbed his thumb over a water ring on the table. I brought it up more than once, she shut it down every time. Last time I mentioned it, she said I was jealous of you. That word lodged in my throat and stayed there. Are you? I asked, because I needed that answer clear. He met my stare without blinking and shook his head. I am a lot of things, jealous of you is not one. Do you really think I want the domestic life she wants? I remembered 100 nights of him roasting that exact lifestyle. He was many shades of irresponsible, but desperate husband was not one. Still, the idea of them had taken space in my brain now. Even if they never wanted each other long term, they had existed. And I was the one who never knew, by design. You know this will blow everything up, I finally whispered. If I confront her, there is no walking this back. She will know you talked, she will feel betrayed from every angle. My pulse pounded while I pictured her face hearing this. A mix of panic and rage aimed squarely at both of us. He nodded, gaze steady, like he had made peace with that outcome. I figured telling you might cost me anyway, he said. Either she gets me out through that engagement deal or you do. I would rather lose with the truth out there than like this. At least then you choose with both eyes open. In that moment I realized something ugly about myself. I had been hoping there was some clear villain, so I felt righteous. Someone I could blame completely, then walk away feeling clean. Instead I saw three people making messy choices, hiding things, avoiding conflict. No easy answer, just a lot of damage waiting for a direction. I pushed my hands over my face and tried to breathe slowly. If I kept this to myself, I became part of their secret. If I told her, I set off a chain reaction I could not control. Either way, the version of us in my head was already gone. I lowered my hands and realized I did not recognize my own life anymore. I dropped my keys on the counter and went straight to her. I met with no warm-up, no hug, just that sentence in the middle of the room. Her hand froze halfway to her bag, fingers clenched around the strap. What did he tell you? She asked, eyes already hard. My heart was pounding so loud I almost missed the question. I watched her face instead of answering, looking for any crack. He told me you slept together before I came in the picture. The words left my mouth faster than my brain could soften them. Something in her expression shut down like a slammed door. She did not yell, she did not even move for a beat. Then her jaw shifted once, small and sharp, like she bit back a curse. It was before you, she said, every syllable clipped and careful. It was casual, it ended, it has nothing to do with us. She tossed her bag onto the chair like she needed something to hit. It has a lot to do with us when you hide it, I shot back. You both knew it mattered enough to never mention it to me. That is not nothing, that is a decision that lasted years. My voice echoed more than I planned and she flinched. Who used the word never? She asked, stare locked on mine. He said you did, I answered, throat suddenly dry again. He said you told him if he cared about me he would stay quiet. That if I found out I would bail, so he protected your image. Her laugh came out sharp and humorless, nothing like her usual. Of course he said that, she murmured, hands on her hips. You're calling him a liar? I asked, even though I already knew. I am calling him selfish, she shot back, breathing faster now. He loved having power over me, he loved holding that history. He knew I was scared you would judge me, so he played hero. Do you really not see that pattern with him? I did not answer because I honestly did not know yet. My brain flipped between versions of the same story on a loop. Did you sleep with him once? I asked, trying to ground it. Or more than that, because he gave a different number. Her eyes narrowed and she looked away for the first time. It was one night, she said, shoulders squared, voice flat. We hooked up, realized it was a mistake, and moved on. He probably doubled it because it sounds better for his ego. Her hands crossed over her chest like she was shielding her ribs. Why are you acting like I cheated on you in advance? That question stung because part of me had gone there already. Not logically, just in that childish way where hurt comes first. I am not saying you cheated, I answered, forcing my tone down. I am saying I built everything with you on a version that skipped this. You chose what I was allowed to know, and he played along. She dragged her palm over her face and let it drop with a sigh. Do you have any idea how terrified I was at the beginning? She asked. You and he were already close, you trusted him more than anyone. You were fragile after your last breakup, you told me that yourself. I knew one detail could make you walk, I panicked. There it was, the word I had been expecting from someone. Panic. I believed that part because I have seen her freeze under pressure. Still, a knot twisted in my chest at how long that panic lived. It has been a long time since the beginning, I answered. She stepped closer, eyes bright, voice low but intense. And look what happened when you heard, she said, nodding toward me. You immediately ran to him, not to me, to interrogate him. You took his version first, then came home ready to cross-examine. This is exactly why I was afraid to be honest back then. That flipped the spotlight straight onto me, and I felt it. I wanted to defend myself, say I needed a neutral angle first. Instead, I heard how it sounded out loud, and guilt hit. We NT to him because you already framed him as dangerous, I said. I wanted to see if there was some huge thing I missed. She laughed again, softer this time, but still bitter around the edges. And conveniently, he left out all the times he pushed and pushed. He did not mention how long he chased me before that night. How he would not accept no, how he turned everything into pressure. Of course, he skipped those parts when he told you his hero story. I blinked because this was new, and I knew it. Are you saying he harassed you? I asked, pulse jumping. Her eyes filled fast, anger and something else mixing together. I am saying he crossed lines I did not want crossed, she answered. And then he wrapped it in jokes so he did not look like the bad guy. I had never heard her speak about anyone like that, not once. She chooses her words carefully when she hates someone, almost precise. Hearing her talk about pressure and lines shook my certainty again. Then why keep him around at all those first months? I asked. Why go on double nights? Why laugh at his jokes with me? Her mouth trembled once before she forced it still again. Because you adored him, she said, voice cracking just a little. You lit up when he walked in, you relaxed when he was there. I was trying to fit into your existing world without wrecking it. I thought I could manage my discomfort until you and I were stronger. That was the part that hit something raw in me. Because I remembered exactly how relieved I felt when Noah showed up. He could fill a room, pull focus, give me an anchor in awkward spaces. Knowing she was silently managing this whole other layer twisted my gut. I hated that we both had secret reasons for wanting him nearby. Why not tell me any of this when we actually got serious? I pushed. Not the first week, not early, but later when you knew me. When you saw I was not going to bolt at every difficult conversation. She shook her head, eyes glistening, hands opening and closing. Every month that passed made it harder, not easier, she whispered. I kept thinking, okay, I will explain it after this fight. After this trip, after this holiday, after this big thing at work. And then every time he did something invasive, you went to him again. You vented with him, you laughed with him, and I felt smaller. At some point, I just accepted I would always be competing. That word landed in both of us at the same time. Competing. I had never thought of it that way, but it fit too well. I split my weight between them without admitting it until now. And she had been keeping score of every shift. So the ultimatum was not just about his dumb comments, I said. It was about this whole secret layer and how he treated you. It was you trying to erase everything that came before me knowing. Her chin lifted at that, like she did not like the word erase. It was me trying to feel like my relationship is actually mine, she answered. We stared at each other, and I felt my anger morph into something heavier. Not gone, just tangled up with guilt and a weird sympathy. I still cannot wrap my head around sleeping with him then choosing me, I admitted. Not the act itself, the sequence, the way it all blended together. It makes the origin of us feel less solid. Her eyes softened for the first time since this started tonight. You were never second choice, she said, stepping even closer. That night with him was reckless, it was me numbing out. Meeting you was different, you know that, you felt that shift too. I wanted to protect what we had from a messy past decision. I wanted to believe that, and a big part of me did. The problem was that every attempt at protection had come through control. First over the story, now over who stayed in my circle. I get being scared, I said, chest tight, palms clammy. What I do not get is you still demanding I cut him off. How can you not get that? She asked, voice rising again quickly. He knows something deeply personal about me that you just heard. He uses it to wedge himself between us every time you fight with me. He plays the wise friend, but he is the only one who benefits. I refuse to build a family knowing he holds that kind of leverage. Her words tumbled faster now, like a dam finally cracked. He watched me beg him not to say anything and enjoyed the power. He saw how anxious I was and still poked at our relationship constantly. Then you ran straight to him when you smelled blood today. Tell me how I am supposed to trust your loyalty with him in the picture. That last line gutted me more than I wanted to admit. Because objectively she was right about one thing, my first call was him. I had picked the friend who knew the secret before the partner living with it. I told myself it was for distance, for clarity, but still. If I were in her shoes, I would not like that story either. So what do you want from me right now? I asked slowly. Do you want an apology for going to him first? Do you want me to swear I believe your side over his entirely? Or do you want me to hit delete on his contact immediately tonight? My voice shook on that last option, which she caught. She looked straight at my eyes, searching for something I could not name. I want you to understand I am not bluffing, she answered. This is not about pride, it is about feeling secure with you. If he stays in your life, I will always keep this guard up. I cannot marry someone while watching my back around his best friend. There it was again, the same line from before but heavier now. Because now it was loaded with shared secrets and competing stories. If I remove him, I lose a huge part of my past, I said. If I keep him, I risk losing the future I plan with you. Each word tasted awful, like I was choosing which limb to cut. She stepped back a little, giving me physical space but not emotional. I am not making you text him tonight, she said, voice tired. I am telling you the reality I can live with and the one I cannot. You are free to choose whichever world you want to stand in. Just do not pretend there is a version where you keep both fully. I thought about the ring hidden at home, wrapped and waiting. I had pictured a night with nerves, sure, but also excitement. Now every scene in my head came with an empty space where he used to be. Or a different version with no aisle, no vows, just me and my stubbornness. For the first time, I was not sure which loss scared me more. She turned toward the hallway, then paused and looked back at me. One more thing, she added quietly, hand resting on the doorframe. If you tell him anything else about what I just shared, we are done. I will not have my trauma turned into another story between you two. Then she walked away, leaving me alone with way too much truth and no answer. I walked right past the jewelry store and pretended I did not see it. I had planned to go in, ask about resizing, start the whole process. Instead, I kept my hands in my pockets and counted cracks in the sidewalk. The box in my drawer felt like it was burning a hole at home. I realized I was already acting like someone who had changed his mind. On the drive back, I turned the radio up too loud on purpose. Anything to drown out the argument replaying itself for the 100th time. Every version ended with the same choice hanging over me like a deadline. By the time I parked, my jaw ached from clenching through red lights. I knew walking inside meant facing her with this new silence. She glanced up when I came through the door, eyes flicking to my hands. No shopping bags, no small box, nothing that looked like a step forward. Where did you go after work? She asked, leaning on the counter. Just drove around a bit, I answered, dropping my keys too quickly. Her eyes narrowed like she heard every word I was not saying. You were weird this morning, she added, staying exactly where she stood. Now you come home wired and quiet, that is not nothing. I grabbed a glass of water just to have something to hold. I needed space to think, I said, staring at the sink instead of her. She watched me for a long beat, then nodded once like she logged it. I hope you're not letting him talk you into anything, she said. She took her phone from the counter, thumb moving across the screen. People like that thrive when things are uncertain, they love chaos. The word burrowed under my skin because part of me agreed. Another part hated how neatly it lined up with her story. My phone buzzed a minute later, and I knew it was connected. A number I recognized as her close friend flashed across the display. I ignored it the first time, let it roll to voicemail with a thud. On the second call, I stepped into the hallway and picked up. Hey, I muttered, already tired, everything okay? You need to wake up about Noah, her friend launched in immediately. No greeting, no small talk, just straight into the subject. I am only telling you this because I care about you long term. I shut my eyes, leaned against the wall, and let her keep going. I already knew whose words I was about to hear. He has been stirring tension for years, everyone sees it but you. He jokes about her behind your back, he mocks your relationship constantly. He told people you are whipped, that she is too much, all of it. Each sentence landed like a pebble, small but relentless and annoying. I am sorry, but you dating her means he has to go. I should have hung up, honestly, I should have set a boundary there. Instead, I asked for examples, like some kind of human recording device. She gave stories from parties, group chats, comments he made in passing. Everyone painted him as smug, disruptive, almost proud of the friction. None of them mentioned that I had laughed along more. Then once, when I walked back into the living room, she was watching my face. She called you, she asked, not even pretending to guess. I sat down opposite her and nodded, throat thick, chest buzzing. She is worried about you, my girlfriend said, like it proved something. People who love you can see what this man is doing. That word slipped out again and hooked into my brain. Doing. Like he was on some mission, not just being careless and loud. I do not want other people involved in this, I answered. It is between us and him, not the entire orbit. Her eyebrows rose, sharp and incredulous, as she crossed her arms. You dragged him in the second you dialed his number, she replied. Now you are upset that my circle wants to protect me from him. She shook her head, small and annoyed, like I was missing something obvious. Again, my reality is bigger than what you want to admit. She went to shower, leaving me alone with my buzzing phone again. 2 more notifications from her friend, both long messages I did not open. A group chat pinged from an old coworker, another name from our life. Bro, what is up with Noah? Hearing some wild things about him. Rumors were already leaking out of our apartment while I stood there. I opened the chat with Noah and hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to send a warning, something vague like stay low for a while. Anything to slow the spread before it turned into a full smear. Then I remembered her standing in the hallway, voice shaking with anger. If you tell him anything else about what I shared, we are done. My hands dropped and I locked the screen instead of answering anyone. That was the first time I felt fully trapped between 2 loyalties. If I defended him, I risked blowing up what I still had with her. If I stayed silent, I watched his reputation take hits he could not see. I wish I could say I picked some noble third option, but I froze. The next wave came from inside my own family, which surprised me. My sister called that weekend, too upbeat for a regular check-in. So heard there is drama about your wedding squad, she joked. The word wedding hit like a punch, since nothing was even official. I swallowed hard and asked what exactly she had heard. She mentioned wanting a tight ceremony, no unnecessary people, my sister said. She specifically brought up Noah, said she hoped you would understand. I told her it was your day too, then she changed the subject fast. I had to sit down because my knees actually went a little weak. She had not even asked me yet, she was already editing my side. How long ago was that conversation? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Couple weeks, maybe more, my sister answered, thinking back. Before you two had that big tension about him, I guess. So this is not new for her, she has been planning this angle. I stared at the wall and felt something heavy slide into place. Looking back, that was the detail that really rattled me. This was not a reactive line thrown out in the heat of a fight. It had been a quiet project, working its way through our circles. By the time she finally voiced it to me, others were already primed. I was the last person to get the full version of the plan. I started rewinding not just recent days, but the last year. Not old history from before we met, just our actual day-to-day choices. Tiny decisions that had seemed random suddenly lined up differently. Like the time she pushed me hard to skip a guy's weekend out of town. She framed it as needing help with house projects, urgent and important. Or when she casually called one of my other friends reckless and draining. She never forbade anything, she just layered concern on top of concern. Every time you go out with him, you come back moody, she would say. I just do not like how you act after hanging with that crowd. Soon I stopped seeing him without really choosing to stop. She had a way of wrapping criticism in care that felt reasonable. You do not notice the pattern while you are living inside it. I just want us rested, I want you focused, I need you present. All good things in theory, all easy to agree with in the moment. I did not see how many yesies were actually little no's to other people. That weekend, another text hit from someone I had not seen in months. A buddy from our old game night sent a quick line. Man, did I do something, you disappeared once you got serious. No accusation, just confusion, which somehow hurt more than blame. I stared at the screen and realized I had ghosted him without meaning to. I started counting in my head how many invitations I had refused lately. Birthdays, game nights, casual bar runs, pickup matches all turned down. Always with some version of we already have plans or I am exhausted. Every time she would touch my arm and thank me for choosing us. Every time I would feel weirdly proud and a little smaller. To be fair, I was not some helpless victim who got stolen. I made those decisions, I chose the comfort of staying home on the couch. I liked feeling wanted, needed, central in someone's schedule. I liked being the guy who did not vanish like my own dad used to. I used that excuse to ignore the fact that my world had shrunk around us. Back in the present, her control over the story started showing more clearly. My mother called next, which almost never happens unless something is big. I am not telling you what to do, she started, which meant she would. But your girlfriend is worried this friend drags you backward. She repeated the same phrases I had heard from the others. She talked to you about Noah, I asked, my voice sounding flat. She wanted advice on how to support you in distancing from him, my mom replied. She said you struggle setting boundaries with people who drain you. That wording did not come from my mother, it came from my partner. I could hear her phrases stitched into my family's mouths. You know that moment when you realize you are the only one confused. Everyone else already got the memo, and you are just catching up. That was me walking around that week, holding half a social obituary. By the time I confronted the issue, the groundwork was laid everywhere. I was fighting a battle where I was already precast as the slow learner. Noah's name pinged again on my phone one night, short and tense. Random question, have I done something to your sister, he wrote. She is ice cold lately, thought we were cool at least on the surface. A second text followed before I could answer. And her friend unfollowed me, which is hilarious but also weird. I stared at the messages, thumb hovering over the replies. The honest answer was yes, he had done something, he existed. Their picture of him did not match the person in my group chat memories. At the same time, I could see how his loud joking fed their fear. I did not know how to explain any of that in a text. Stuff is messy right now, I finally typed, choosing each word carefully. People are taking sides without knowing the full story, please lay low. It was a cowardly answer, and I knew it as I hit send. He replied with a single line. Lay low from what, man? Existing. I tried to talk to my partner about the campaigning a few nights later. We were cleaning up after dinner, the most neutral time I could pick. I found out you spoke to my family about him, I started. The sponge in her hand stopped moving, and she looked over at me. I asked for support, not permission, she answered, voice steady. It feels like you are building a case against him behind my back, I said. And against me too, like you are casting me as helpless in need of saving. Her shoulders tightened, and she set everything down with deliberate care. You vented to him about our fights for years, she replied. I get 1 month of support from people close to me and you object. The worst part is I heard the logic in what she said. She was not wrong that I had given Noah my side many times. She was not wrong that she turned to people she trusted now. The difference was that my venting never led to people freezing her out. Her venting was changing how my entire circle viewed my friend. You are not just sharing feelings, I pushed, trying to stay calm. You are asking them to adjust invitations to cut him from events. You spoke to my sister about a wedding we have not even planned. That is more than support, that is restructuring my life in advance. Her eyes flashed and she took a step toward me. Do you trust my judgment with the people around us? She asked. Because that is what this comes down to, your belief in my instinct. If I say someone around us is toxic, do you think I am exaggerating? Or do you think maybe I, the one being targeted, know something? She held my stare, waiting for an answer I did not have yet. That question caged me in immediately. If I said yes, I had to follow through and cut Noah out entirely. If I said no, I was telling her I thought she dramatized everything. Either way, one person I cared about would see me as disloyal. I chose silence again, which only deepened the crack between us. Over the next few days, I saw more subtle things that had slipped past me. She started suggesting changes to future holidays, always in small doses. Maybe this year we skip your friends' gathering, focus on family things. Maybe next time we travel, just the two of us, no shared houses. Each suggestion sounded reasonable when isolated, almost thoughtful. She also pushed for more joint decisions in my calendar. Send me your schedule, I will help you avoid overcommitting. I hate when you come home drained from people who do not care about you. Again, it sounded like care, like partnership, like planning. Underneath, I saw how many of the crossed-out plans involved my side only. I want to be clear. She did plenty of kind things too. This is where it gets confusing and where I have to own my bias. She remembered my big meetings, cooked when I was wiped, cheered me on. She held me when I woke up panicking about money or work shifts. That mix of soft support and quiet control is what kept me hooked. Mixed into all of that, the ring sat untouched where I had hidden it. I could not bring myself to move it, not even to a different drawer. Just knowing it was there turned every argument into a loaded one. I would look at her mid-fight and picture her wearing it. Then I would picture the empty space where my oldest friend used to stand. I finally cracked during a small, stupid disagreement about a birthday. One of my few remaining single friends invited us both to his party. She wrinkled her nose when I read the message out loud. That crew always ends up drunk and messy, can we skip it? She asked. He can come here another time, just him, I cannot do the whole group. This is the 4th invitation in a row you want to skip, I replied. It is starting to look like you only want filtered versions of my life. One friend at a time, on your turf with your conditions. My voice rose despite my effort to stay composed. I'm losing people one by one, and you keep calling it maturity. Her expression hardened at that last line, like I had crossed hers. You are not losing people, she answered, pointing toward my chest. You are growing past childish habits that kept you stuck for years. Do you really want to be that guy at 40, still out every weekend? Or do you want to build something stable, something that will last? The worst part of all this is that she was speaking to my biggest fear. I did not want to be the man who never left high school emotionally. I did not want to be the guy who chose beer over commitment. Those fears were real, and she knew exactly how to press them. Every time she did, it made me question my own motives. That night I lay awake and tried to imagine a compromise. Some middle road where Noah stayed, but with clear limits and distance. Where she felt respected, he toned down the jokes, everyone adjusted. It sounded nice for about 30 seconds, then reality flooded in. Neither of them was built for half measures, and I knew it. From where I sit now, writing this, I can see the pattern clearly. At the time, it felt like a bunch of disconnected frustrations. She was tightening our world, he was making light of everything, I was stuck. Each person thought they were right, thought they were protecting something sacred. Meanwhile, my proposal turned from when into if without me saying it aloud. The real turning point in this chapter of the story was quiet. No shouting, no dramatic exit, just me standing in front of my drawer. I opened it, looked at the small box, and closed it again. Not out of anger, not out of spite, just tired confusion. That simple pause sent more ripples through my life than any big fight. A week later, she noticed the change before I spoke it. "You are different with me," she said one night, voice low, eyes unsure. "Less present, like you are half in another room inside your head." I almost told her about walking past the jewelry store that day. Instead, I shrugged, because admitting that would make it all real. That is the thing about these moments. They do not come with dramatic music or a clear label. You just realize later that a decision happened when you stepped aside. By the time her friends and my family had fully taken their places, I was already halfway out of the version of our future she was selling. I am not cutting him out. That was the first thing out of my mouth that night. No warm-up, no soft start, just those words in our living room. She turned from the sink like someone had pulled a string. "What did you just say?" she asked, voice already tight. I stayed where I was, hands jammed into my pockets. "I have thought about it, really thought about it," I said. "I cannot drop him like trash to prove I love you. Asking me to erase him is something I cannot live with." I watched her face harden with every piece of that sentence. "So that is your final answer?" she asked, arms folding slowly. "You choose the man who mocks our relationship over a future with me." She stepped closer, eyes shining, expression held in place by will. "I want to be very clear, so you cannot twist this later. If you keep him, there is no wedding, there is no us long term." I should have stopped and measured my words right then. Instead, I pushed harder because my pride was already running. "You are not asking for respect, you are asking for control," I said. "You have been clearing my contacts for months and calling it care. This is just the biggest cut you are trying to make." Her mouth opened, then closed again, like she rewrote her reply midair. "You think this is about control," she said, lahing once without humor. "I am trying to protect myself from someone who hurt me deeply. And from a partner who hands him details from our private mess. If anything, I should have drawn this line a long time ago." I dragged a hand over my face, fighting the urge to shout back. "Then why did you not?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay level. "Why wait until I was looking at rings to drop this condition? Why not tell me the whole truth before we got here?" She froze at that one word, and her eyes narrowed quickly. "You were looking at rings?" she asked, head tilting a little. Her gaze dropped to my empty hands, then back up, quick and sharp. "Do not play games with me right now, answer that straight." My chest tightened because I had not meant to mention that. But the damage was done, so I nodded once. "Yes," I said, and my voice came out rougher than I expected. "I had one picked I was planning to ask this year. I stopped after you made Noah the price for marrying you. I could not reconcile that with the person I thought I knew." Her lips trembled before she bit down on the bottom one. "So you were close to proposing," she said, breathing a little faster. "And instead of telling me that, you went to him first. You heard his version of our history, then came home with a verdict. You admit you nearly asked me to spend my life with you. Yet you value his place more than the actual life we would build." That stung not because it was wrong, but because it was half right. I had gone to Noah before I told her everything I was feeling. I had shared big fears with him that I had not voiced to her. "I value honesty in my life more than either of you," I answered. "And I cannot start a marriage with this much hidden between us." She looked at me like I had punched her in the chest. "Hidden," she repeated, laughing softly in disbelief. "You know about my worst choice now, I laid it out for you. You know he pushed, you know I panicked, you know I was ashamed. What exactly is still hidden at this point?" I took a breath that did nothing for my nerves. "The way you pulled everyone else in before talking to me," I said. "The way you rewrote my friendships as immature habits that needed trimming. The way my side of the story got cast as weakness needing management. All of that is wrapped with love and concern, but it is still pressure." Her hands dropped to her sides, fingers curled slightly. "You want to talk about what is unfair," she said, voice rough now. "You made jokes about me being strict based on his words. You gave him a seat inside our arguments that I did not consent to. You are angry that I sought backup after being outnumbered for years. That landed, and I will not pretend it did not. I had let my buddy's phrases slide into my vocabulary without thinking. I had laughed when he teased, then carried that energy home. Even now, part of me wanted to say she was overreacting. Another part knew I would hate being talked about that way. I mishandled a lot of things, I admitted, chest feeling heavy. I should never have repeated his labels or vented that deep. I will own that completely because it was wrong and lazy. But me being wrong does not make your demand automatically right. You are still telling me I must amputate someone to stay with you. She flinched at that word, eyes closing for a second. Then she stepped closer, close enough that I could hear her breathe. I am asking you to remove someone who enjoys seeing us unstable, she said. Someone who used my body, used my fear, and then used your trust. I am asking you to put me first where it has never been tested. I stared at her, and for a moment I almost folded. Because she was crying now, quietly, tears slipping down fast. She rarely let herself cry mid-argument, she always tried to hold it. Do not do that, I whispered, feeling myself weaken under that sight. Do not push tears into this to make my choice feel cruel. She wiped her cheeks with the heels of her hands, frustrated. This is not strategy, this is my real fear showing up, she said. Every day you stay close to him, I live with that knot. The one that says he can blow up my image with one sentence. I cannot build a life while someone like that hovers nearby. I believed her fear completely, that is the annoying part. I just did not believe cutting this person would magically heal everything. Because there were other patterns in us that had nothing to do with him. I had changed pieces of myself to keep the peace without noticing. She had gotten used to winning arguments by invoking future and safety. You know what scares me? I asked, my throat suddenly dry again. That if I prove my devotion by doing this, it will not be the last time. Next time it will be another person, another habit, another demand. Every test will be framed as protecting what we have built. I will wake up one day and not recognize my own life at all. Her eyes flashed at that, like I had insulted her to the core. You think I am some controlling villain waiting to isolate you, she said. You really see me as that calculating, that cruel, that manipulative. If you believe that about me, why are we even trying anymore? Her voice cracked on the last word, which twisted my gut again. I do not think you are a villain, I said, forcing each word out. I think you are hurt, and fear makes you draw extreme lines. I think I am scared too, and I let others manage my conflict. I think both of us have made this triangle more toxic than it had to be. And I think forcing a proposal on top of that is insane. Silence dropped between us for a few seconds that felt longer. Then she looked at me with a strange calm that worried me more. Then we are done, she said, like she had practiced it already. Not shouted, not sobbed, just stated like a closing statement. If you cannot do what I need to feel secure, I am out. My heart lurched even though I saw it coming miles away. You are ending this because I will not exile one person, I asked. Not for cheating, not for lying to you, but for refusing this demand. You really want to walk away over him, after everything we have built? She shook her head slowly, almost tired. I am ending this because our values do not match, she answered. I see someone harming us and move to cut him off, you hesitate. I watch you protect his place more fiercely than you protect my peace. That tells me exactly how future conflicts will go between us. I will not sign up for a lifetime of begging you to pick me. I wanted to scream that it was not that simple, because it was not. I wanted to list every time I had chosen her, all the sacrifices. Nights I stayed home, trips I skipped, events I left early. But those were my decisions too, and throwing them around felt cheap. So I swallowed all of that and spoke the only clear truth I had. I am not ready to propose under these conditions, I said quietly. I am not ready to cut him loose to secure a marriage. I am not ready to pretend that feels healthy or loving to me. If that means we end now, then that is what is actually true. The words tasted like metal and relief at the same time. She stared at me, eyes red, breathing uneven, but she did not argue. Thank you for finally being honest, she said, voice hoarse. At least now I know where I stand in your priorities. She turned away and grabbed her bag from the chair. Stay here tonight, I will go to my sister's place. I stepped forward on instinct. Wait, I said, reaching out, then letting my hand drop halfway. We do not have to make living decisions in the middle of this. We can sleep on it and talk tomorrow when our heads clear. She did not turn, just tightened her grip on the strap. My head is clear, she said, shoulders rigid, keys clinking softly. I have been bracing for this exact moment ever since I spoke up. I hoped you would surprise me, prove what he says about you wrong. Instead, you did exactly what I knew you would do. Every move you made led us right here. The door shut behind her with a dull thud that echoed too long. I just stood there in the quiet, listening to nothing, heart pounding. I had wanted clarity, and now I had it in the worst possible way. I walked to the bedroom like someone on autopilot. Pulled the drawer open and took out the ring box. It felt heavier than it should have in my hand. I flipped it open and stared at the thing I once dreamed about. There was a time when this object meant future, trust, stability. Now it looked like evidence from a life I almost lived. I closed it and set it on top of the dresser, not hidden anymore. I did something dumb then, because of course I did. I snapped a picture of the box and sent it to Noah. Captioned it with 4 words. This almost happened with her. He called within seconds, no text, just immediate ringing. You okay? He asked as soon as I answered, voice uncharacteristically quiet. No jokes, no noise in the background, just him holding his breath. I ended things, I said, leaning against the wall for balance. She walked out, bags in hand, said values do not match. I could hear him let out a long breath on the other end. I am sorry, man, he said, and I could tell he meant it. Not in a I told you so way, in a that actually sucks way. You were all in, I know that, I watched it happen. Do you regret choosing like you did, or do you feel lighter? The question hit harder than any lecture could have. I looked around our place, the place we had built together. Her mug still by the sink, her jacket on the chair, her shoes lined up. My chest hurt, my eyes burned, my hands shook a little. I feel like I just ripped myself in half, I said bluntly. But under that, way under that, there is this tiny piece of relief. He was quiet for a moment, letting that sit between us. That little piece is important, he said finally. You do not get that feeling when you abandon someone you truly want. You get it when something has been squeezing you for a long time. Now you can actually breathe and decide how you want your life to look. Do not make this about winning against her, I warned, sharper than intended. I am not your prize for surviving this mess, I am just wrecked. I am not dropping you to prove love, but I am also not celebrating. This is not some victory lap for either of you. I just blew up a future I cared about. He took that hit and did not deflect this time. Fair, he said a little softer. I am not happy she is gone, I am relieved you are not controlled. Those are 2 different things, and I know it does not feel that way yet. If you need space from me after this, I will get that too. That last sentence mattered more than he probably realized. He was finally not grabbing for a place, not demanding a role. For once, he was offering distance if I needed it. It made me think maybe I had been holding onto an outdated image of him. One where he never grew up, never self-reflected, never yielded. We stayed on the phone a while without solving anything. Just 2 tired guys breathing into the line, sharing broken silence. When we hung up, the apartment felt even emptier. I slept on the couch that night not because I had to. Because the bed still smelled like us, and I could not handle that. The next week was paperwork and logistics and dull aches. We divided bills, split shared items, argued about stupid things. Who kept which piece, who moved out first, how to sort it all. Some conversations were icy, some weirdly polite, some raw. Everyone felt like chipping another chunk off something we once loved. We did not rehash Noah much during those talks. The decision was made there, that part was done. We focused on practical steps, places to stay, timing. She cried once in the hallway when she thought I was not looking. I nearly caved then, but stopped myself with both hands on the doorframe. On moving day, we barely spoke at all. Her friends came to help, eyes cold on me, polite but distant. I stayed out of their way, carrying boxes, signing forms. At one point, my sister hugged her for a long time in the driveway. Then my sister came to me and whispered, "I am glad you chose yourself." That line stuck with me more than anything others said. Chose myself. It did not feel that heroic, sitting on the floor that night alone. It felt like failing a test I did not agree to take. Still, some small part of me recognized truth hiding inside it. I will not pretend I turned into some perfect friend after this. Noah and I still had work to do on boundaries and respect. We had hard talks about how he talked about the women I dated, about how he handled sensitive information, about what support actually meant. He had to own his part, not just point at hers. I also had to face my own patterns without blaming everybody else. Why I ran to outside voices instead of sitting in discomfort. Why it took a crisis for me to notice how isolated I had become. Why I laughed when someone I loved was the punchline. None of that disappears just because the relationship ends. I ran into her months later at a grocery store, which felt unreal. No dramatic soundtrack, just two tired people with carts. We froze for a second, then both gave awkward half waves. "Hi," she said, voice careful like we were coworkers. "Hey," I answered, and my throat tightened again. She looked healthier somehow, lighter around the edges. "I heard you moved closer to your sister," she said. "Yeah," I nodded, shifting my weight, feeling strange in my own skin. Needed a reset, wanted to be near some support that was mine. She nodded too, like she actually understood that. We chatted for a minute, shallow things, work and family. There was a moment where we both almost mentioned him. You could feel his name hanging unsaid between us like a test. I decided to spare us both that final round. Instead, I just said, "I hope you feel safer now," and meant it. Her eyes softened at that, and for the first time there was no edge. "I do," she answered, and there was no triumph in it. "It still hurts, but I can breathe better, and that matters. I hope you find people who challenge you without slicing you down." We smiled at each other like two people who shared a war. Now, writing all this out, I can see my own mess more clearly. Back then, I wanted one person to be the villain so I felt clean. Either her for tightening the walls or him for stirring everything. The truth is uglier and more honest than that simple story. We all played roles that fit our fears a little too well. She was scared of being judged and abandoned, so she hid and controlled. He was scared of losing his place, so he pushed it. And he joked too much. I was scared of conflict, so I outsourced my decisions and called it balance. Put that combination in a small space, add history, add pressure. Eventually something cracks, and in our case it was us. Do I think I avoided a lifetime of constant ultimatums? Probably. Do I think I also walked away from someone who loved me in her own way? Also yes. That is the part that still knots my stomach some nights. I still keep the ring in a small box in my closet. Not because I hold on to hope for us, that chapter is done. I keep it as a reminder of what I almost agreed to without reading the fine print. Love that requires a body count to prove itself stops being love. It turns into something else, something I am finally trying not to choose again.